Exploring the bizarre. Your e-ticket ride into the world of the paranormal. Strap yourself in as we traverse the universe exploring the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology, as well as other dimensions. It's time to take back the night. Now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bizarre, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Down, Simba, down!
Hold that tiger. Hold that tiger. Hold that tiger. Back, 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 you wild beast. Take it easy, boy. Don't worry. You're going to get fed. Oh, meow. I tell you, these giant cats, Tim, are getting bigger and bigger all the time. Tim, I can't control him anymore. First there was Dogman. Now there is Earl, the incredible feline of the Lower East Side. Oh well, being a part of the circus is all what Exploring the Bizarre is about. It's a learning experience. And the first thing that I've learned is that you've got to be careful when you're in the center ring. And Tim, I know you're out there on the highway. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, that's right, Tim. You know, I love Exploring the Bizarre so much that I am driving home from the airport after doing a mysterious shoot in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And I didn't want to miss tonight's show because I know that we've got two really fantastic guests. But unfortunately, I don't have access to any of my notes or anything like that, Tim. So I'm just
I will just have to wing it myself, won't I?
I appreciate that.
Well, considering that it's a show about animals, I guess winging it isn't too bad after all, right?
Right.
Boy, I got to throw in a couple of zingers there once in a while, you know. Otherwise, where would we be, you know?
That's right.
Tonight, we have a very special show. And we're going to explore an area that we haven't delved into before. We're going to explore the spiritual bond between people and animals. Now, just about everyone that we know, I can go by my friends on Facebook, the 4,000 or 5,000 that I have, people share their lives with all sorts of animals: dogs, cats, horses, birds, a couple of turtles thrown in there. I believe somebody even sent me a brief video of their pet goose. So obviously there is a great love and affection between humans and the animal kingdom. And tonight we're going to find out exactly what that connection is and how the planet has actually evolved, according to one of our guests, because of this spiritual bond. She believes that the consciousness of the planet and the animals living on it are actually raising in vibrations. Now, we have two special guests this evening. We have with us our old friend and associate, Diane TESSMAN, out there in Ansger. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Ansger, Iowa?
You've left off the saint, Tim.
Oh,
it's
Saint.
Ansgar. He was a Norwegian saint.
What do I know about saints? And
nothing.
Nothing at all, let me tell you. But this area where Diane lives is where she was actually raised and had her, I guess, initial or one of her initial UFO experiences. Diane is a channel. She is, I guess we could call her an abductee, although I'm not sure if she was physically taken on board a spacecraft, but she certainly had an ongoing communication and meetings with her special one that she knows as Tibus.
And so I was taken on board, Tim, but
okay.
we'll get about animals. Right.
we'll get into that in a little while. I know we've talked about this before, but we have to obviously go over this a little bit for some of our new listeners. And we are, growing each week and gathering more people listening to the program. And all the way out there in what must be beautiful Hawaii, we have Jennifer O'Neill. Now, Jennifer is new to the program. She runs a spiritual learning center called Keys to the Spirit World. She is the author of several books. She does online classes, and she is one of Hawaii's top psychics and leading experts in the field of spirit communication. She has spent the last 20 years as a professional psychic and spiritual teacher, helping people all over the world learn how to develop themselves spiritually. And we're going to delve into Jennifer's background, and we're going to find out her contact and communications with the animal kingdom, which I know is very important to her. So how are you out there in Hawaii, Jennifer? How are you today?
Aloha. It's beautiful here. It's actually very hot.
Well,
we're daytime still. You're nighttime over there.
Well, I'm we're about 10:15 in New York City, and you're what, about a little bit after 4 p.m.
Yep, so, a little bit after 4. It's sun shining, and it's a beautiful day.
And you've got a few hours left to. Are you on the water? I'm not exactly physically on the water right now. But, well, I didn't mean walking. I didn't mean walking on it. We'll leave that to some of our other guests. Yeah. Okay.
But I am about a block from the ocean.
Well, that's close enough. Well, Jennifer, why don't you start out by giving us a little bit of background about you, because you are new to the exploring the bizarre airwaves here. How exactly did you get involved in, I guess, the overall, I would call it the paranormal? What is your background?
Well, my background is basically I was born this way. I know a lot of people have things that happen to them where they discover that they had a gift. For me, it was a little bit different. I didn't know no one else had a gift like me. So because I was born with my gift so strong, I just kept wondering why everybody else was making these weird choices and doing things that weren't aligning with them, and how they didn't just know these things. And so it was very confusing for me, actually, when I was younger. And then when I got older, I realized that people didn't know and see things like I did. So I had to kind of try to filter and navigate and figure out what was normal for other people, because I knew my normal. And when I did that, I actually started discovering that, and I could see that people had the ability to be a lot more tuned in with things that I seen and I knew, but they really ignored it a lot. And so when I really realized that, I was more in my 20s by this time, I kind of sort of went on a mission to start pointing out things to people and maybe teaching them along the way of what they were ignoring and what they were overlooking, that were signs and signals that were given to them that they just kind of blew off and said, that's coincidence.
Well, now, what were some of your first experiences, though? Can you be a little specific about it?
About when I was younger, you mean? Like,
did you live in a house that was haunted, or did you communicate with spirits, or what exactly was it that?
No, I could always see spirits. I could always see colors. I remember very vividly remembering the other side and where I'd come from. Like, I knew it like it was my other house. Like, I was 7 and 8 years old, and I remember laying in bed and wondering, why am I even here? Like, I miss my home, which was the other side. I knew what it looked like. I knew where I'd been. And I had a hard time kind of figuring out like what I was doing on Earth. And so I remember instances like that very vividly, but I always would hear spirits, but to me, for some reason, it was more normal because I actually grew up like my grandmother and it goes in my genealogy line, psychics in my line. And so it wasn't like abnormal to hear spirits. So the way I grew up, they weren't like, oh, that wasn't anything. What really, I remember a lot being frustrated when I'd be like, well, I know the phone's going to ring, and then it would ring and people wouldn't believe me. Like, as weird as that is, even growing up in a genealogy line, sometimes, they'd be like, okay, whatever. So I really remember a lot of the other side and a lot of the spirit realm. And I remember communicating with spirits a lot. And I remember a lot of interaction with a higher being when I was a lot younger. And so, just being able to communicate or having them talk to me and just having an entire knowing through my body that like I said, I didn't know any different. So I just knew we were communicating. It was just what we did. I didn't know other people weren't doing that. So, yeah, I have very vivid memories of the other side. I have very vivid memories of talking with spirits. It was just always real to me.
Now, you mentioned a higher being. Well, now, Diane has had a continuing contact with a higher being. This higher being, would you consider this a spirit being or an extraterrestrial or an angel, or how would you define it?
Well, I have the higher being I'm referring to would be more of a godlike being. I also have had contacts with angels, very much so, and actually aliens as well. Weird, but they interdimensionally travel, and I get lots of information when I'm sleeping. They actually show me different dimensional things, different grid-like patterns, how that they're protecting, how they kind of protect over different parts of the universe. So, like, for instance, where the United States or China or whatever, they have their own countries and defense mechanisms, defense systems, and they're under that protection. What I've been shown by the aliens that I have been given a lot of information, I've been spoke to, would be very similar on a universal scale, where they actually we are under the protection of a certain realm, and that there are different areas that are protected. And they actually have flags or different symbols, I guess I would say, I don't know what you would call them, that represent each portion of the universe of where you're under their protection or you're under their protection. So I've actually had quite a bit of contact here and there. I don't talk about it as much on my shows because for my audience, they're not as interested in that. But yeah, it's been very interesting.
Now we have quite a few people who either claim that they are in touch with the Ashtar Command or are very familiar with this group of extraterrestrials that is supposed to be safeguarding the planet and hovering over it, and from time to time delivering messages to several channels. Would this be part of the program?
I guess I was never given that specific name, so I'm not entirely sure. Could be. But I do know that there's a specific one that comes and talks to me. There's three that comes to me every once in a while, probably once a year or so, just giving information to me about what's going on as far as us being under protection, how safe that we are, kind of some things that they're watching over with, Earth and different things like that. So I guess I don't know a name for a group. Might be. I don't know.
Now, do they actually materialize in front of you in physical form, or is this something that you see through your third eye?
I get a lot of premonition dreams where I have a lot of contact, and then in meditative states. But a lot of my premonitions, I don't sleep like normal people. I haven't done that for years. I think I'm more like an Edgar Cayce type of thing. I get a lot of because I leave my body, and I can remember. I'm very aware when I'm astral traveling, because it's like I'm standing next to you, and when I'm supposed to be sleeping. So I astral travel often, and I'm so aware of my astral travel states that's usually when we'll have communication. Is during an astral travel state.
Whew, that's got to leave you exhausted in the morning, though, I would think.
Oh, it's ridiculous. I mean, people, they always say, I want to do what you do, and I love what you do. And I think to myself, but you have no idea. You have no idea, because it does get exhausting, because sometimes you've been so mentally busy. And like I said, I'm very aware when I'm astral traveling. I'm very, very, it's like I'm up. And so, yeah, you get almost mentally exhausted sometimes, because you just sort of want to break from it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've heard that a lot of people who are, extremely psychic and extremely empathic, they have a tendency to, just find themselves just in a constant state of exhaustion. And I know, and Tim Beckley knows a lot of famous psychics who have died young just because they have given practically all of themselves through the years helping other people.
That is very true. And I actually bring that up to people, because I do a mentorship program where I actually mentor healers who want to get into this industry. And I have known some of the best psychics and healers, like, they are phenomenal, and they all died young. And that you have to be very careful with your health. So because of exactly what you just said, and it's like you're on all the time. So for me, specifically anybody out there who is like me, you really have to pay attention to your physical body and exercise, because exercise will ground you, and it will keep you with one foot in the physical world better. So the people who I know that have died young, they tended to be too much in the spiritual realm all the time, constantly, in their waking time and in their sleep time. For me, I can actually step out of that if I'm being very physical. And so I actually work out several times a week and stuff, just to keep one foot on the ground. And that is when I will sleep better. And I will actually have a few hours where I'm not doing the astral travel. But if I stay consistent at it, it's just, you have to monitor your abilities. It's something people are very unaware of. So it's interesting that you knew that.
Now, Diane, I want to ask Diane a question. Now, your contacts that you've described to us have been more on would you say, a physical level, rather than, you have had experiences, I think, in the dream state, correct?
Oh, it's kind of a big subject to tackle. It's different than Jennifer's. I had a couple of childhood encounters that were, as far as I'm concerned, nuts and bolts UFO encounters with a being on board, a positive being, as it turned out, luckily. And then in childhood, I was near nature. Dogs and cats were my really only friends, because I didn't have siblings. We lived in a remote area. And then when I grew up, I became aware of my childhood experiences. Was with MUFON as state section director for Florida. Went to Leo Sprinkle, who's been on your program,
yes.
Dr. Leo Sprinkle, for hypnosis. And then over the years, what happened, and I've matured. I sleep great, so I'm a completely different category here, but I have channeled and received messages and done newsletters since 1983 that a lot of readers have loved and have stayed with me all that time. So I received messages from whom I met in childhood. Mm-hmm. I think he is a separate being, just like I'm a separate being, but I think we have sort of an entangled bit of our consciousness that perhaps was done when I was taken aboard. So just in a nutshell, that's, they work in all sorts of different ways.
Now, does he say
meow,
that?
Don't forget the animals. Meow.
Yeah, that he represents any particular group that's coming here?
He refers to space-time intelligence, positive group. I'm not sure that they totally protect us, because they feel that this is our time as a species to evolve spiritually, or perhaps we won't be worthy of going on if we can't handle the crisis that we have made. But he knows that we can. So, it's kind of a challenge but with the reassurance that it'll be okay. But it is up to us. Space-time intelligence is not the Ashtar Command, as far as I know. I knew Tuella, who, I don't know if she originated it, but was big into Ashtar.
Oh, no. Well, actually, no, as far as I know, the Ashtar Command, it goes back many years before Tuella.
Yeah.
George Van Tassel used to sit under the rock there, out in the Mojave Desert, near where you lived there, Joshua Tree, for a while. And he would go into, I would say, a very light trance. And Ashtar, this being called Ashtar, would speak to him and give him messages, almost as if they were transmitting over a radio receiver. In fact, some of the early messages, I don't know whether this included George Van Tassel, because it's probably hard to get radio messages under the 50-ton rock or something. But a lot of the early messages were received over light beam communicators and over ham radio sets, and some of them were from Ashtar. But of course, if somebody tells you they're Ashtar, how do you know who they are if they're speaking over a radio?
Well, and then I'll let Jennifer go on. For me, I've never heard a voice in my head in my life. It's something entangled in my own consciousness. It's not a schizophrenic a problem. It's something enhanced in there that I can tune into. It's a part of me now. So that's my answer to that.
Yeah, that's just another form of channeling. That's an ability, of course, that she has, or Diane has. And I have a question for her, if that's okay.
Well, absolutely. That's what we're here for.
Well, you got me thinking of an encounter I had. I actually was listening to, and I did remember a physical encounter that I had, and I was in Oregon, and I was at a metaphysical show, and I was doing readings and such there. And the interesting thing is, this person was not of this planet, 100%. I mean, they came in physical form. They talked to me at the booth, and me and my son are both there, and we're, he's got abilities as well. The most interesting thing I found, which is my question for her, is I literally could not read this person. They were like a blank slate.
We have a commercial break coming. We have a commercial break coming in, and it's covering up our voices. So we'll be right back in just a few minutes.
Now back to exploring the bizarre with two of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal, your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Hey, Tim, I just want to ask before we start out again, and I hand the microphone over to you. Can you give us any information on where you were the last couple of days?
Oh, well, yeah, I was in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I was involved with the production of a documentary about a certain scientist who went to Colorado Springs a number of years ago to conduct some very interesting experiments. And that's all I can say for right now.
All right. Well, we certainly look forward to this. Will be on a major cable TV network, I guess, in the near future.
That's correct, yes.
All right. Also, too, I want to remind our listeners that I will be on Sunday night, the 28th of August, on Coast to Coast AM with George Knapp. And we will be talking about the matrix control system of Philip K. Dick and the paranormal coincidences and synchronicities of me. And of course, it's a large audience, and I think it's a subject that's never really been covered on their program. And of course, George Knapp is very astute on all of these subjects, and so I do look forward to that program. Anyway, Timmy, you want to continue on here for a few minutes with Jennifer?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I want to give Jennifer a chance to finish her question before we had to go to our break. She was asking Diane about somebody that her and her son was talking to that they got the feeling was possibly not of this planet. So Jennifer, go ahead with your question.
Well, we knew I 100% know that they, like, you could tell that they were not of here for whatever reason, but you could, because you couldn't, whenever I come into contact with anybody, it doesn't matter who it is, my entire life, I get energy from them. I can read them. It doesn't mean that any other beings don't have any energy, but it definitely was something that was very foreign and it was almost blocked. It wasn't very readable.
Uh-huh.
I'm assuming that was done on purpose.
Probably,
because I'm assuming that they put up something. So do you ever notice, have you noticed, Diane, my question to you is, and then also when I was talking to them, the conversation was a little bit different. They weren't as fluid as how we normally talk. They had an interesting stone on that I'd never seen before that they said was from somewhere in Peru. But do you notice when you've had physical contact with them that they feel different to you than other people?
Yes, I was really young when I did have physical contact with them. 4 years old and perhaps 7 for another encounter.
Mm-hmm.
My impression has always been that there was something enhanced about him. He looked human, though he had gold, kind of translucent eyes, which aren't in human gene pools that I know of. But outside of that, he was human. I saw other little beings that weren't as human, but there was something. He was very much in control of it. I mean, which of course he would be because I was really young, but very reticent and very decent. But yes, probably blocked. And then one more possibility is that maybe an artificial intelligence, not a robot, not a science fiction android, but if humans are enhanced with artificial intelligence, that might give you the feeling of a block or of not emptiness, but what you're describing might be, and my term of enhanced human might be that he not an organic human entirely, but not the Borg either. So that's just an idea as far as your feeling there.
Mm-hmm. It was just interesting to me, the difference. There was definitely, like I said, I can walk through the mall and pretty much tell everybody's story. Like people, I don't like to do that because I like to just shop like regular people. Right. So people ask me that, and I can walk by and I can go, oh, yep, they're having trouble with this. They have this background. Oh, yep. It's like I know everybody's story. And so with this person, I didn't know the story. It was very interesting. And and me and my son looked at each other and we were both like, I said, did you notice that? And he's like, yeah, did you? I'm like, yeah, okay. It was very interesting concept.
Well, Jennifer, I want to bring in the animal kingdom because that's something I wanted to discuss for a long time. And Diane has her menagerie of cats and dogs out there in St Ansger. St Ansger. But how do you mentioned to me in one of our email conversations that animals are pretty developed when it comes to tuning into the spiritual world. How did you find that out, and what is your connection with the animal kingdom?
You're talking to Jennifer.
Jennifer, yes.
Right.
Because they telepathically can talk to me just like a spirit can. And so one of the things, my ability with vibrations is, like I said, when I read people's stories, I also get a vibration off of them. So like if somebody is a low vibration, I get this low, weird feeling from them. And the only way I can describe it is it's almost like if you play notes on a guitar or something, you have the low notes and then you have the high notes. Animals always have a very high vibration to them. Any animals that I come into contact with, And I started kind of looking into that a little bit more as I noticed the energy of the earth and the universe and just around as a whole was beginning to rise, and it was causing people a lot of issues. Some people aren't doing so well with that, and other people are doing wonderfully with that, because everybody vibrates. This is a scientific thing. It's not like it's a metaphysical thing that we are made of energy and there's a vibration that comes from us. Well, so is there from the earth. Well, when I started noticing that people were having difficulty, animals are not having difficulty. They are very much tuning in to this new vibration that's coming, and I can feel their vibration higher and higher, and I can hear it, and I can feel it, I can see it. And they are trying more now. They're noticing that people's vibrations are now raising higher than they have been in several hundred years. So as people's vibrations are raising, what some people are noticing is animals intently staring at them or really trying to communicate with people. They're a lot more aware of the animals, and the animals are a lot more aware of them, because they are really trying to communicate with people, because they know that as their vibration raises, they may possibly have the ability to communicate telepathically, which is what animals do. So they're really almost being guiders, in a sense, of helping people kind of raise their vibration. The difference between people and animals don't offer resistance, people do. So because we have free will, we can resist change, and we can resist our soul and internal body wanting to learn more and wanting to be more spiritual, wanting to be curious about the aliens, wanting to be curious about the universe. We can resist that by our brain going, well, this is stupid, or nobody is listening to me. We can just shut it down. Animals don't do that. They just naturally move in any direction, because they are so tuned into the spiritual world, and they're tuned into the vibration of the earth. So they're very aware of any earth changes. They're very aware of any spirits that are around. Obviously, there's been things where tsunamis happen and animals run to high land. My animals in particular, we have a lot of spirit activity around anywhere I've ever lived. I've decided they just follow us. But anyways, my animals, when there's a spirit in the room, boy, they know it. They're very tuned into that vibration. It's a higher vibration than what our physical mind is used to. If that makes sense.
And you say that they're actually trying to guide us into a new consciousness era.
Mm-hmm. They are really trying to connect with us and trying to get us to tune into that part of yourself. So they're trying to connect with you. And if you sit there, so for instance, for people who are not understanding what I'm saying, you're going to probably notice that more pets that you're around, or your own pets, are going to almost be more, they're going to be watching you more. The eye contact's going to be more. You're going to be around more animals in general, more birds, more insects. People are starting to see a lot more of them. And they're going to show up at different times, synchronistic times, to maybe you wondering, should I do this? And maybe you are really interested in frogs, and all of a sudden this frog is in front of your path, which you haven't seen a frog in 10 months. They're very in tune to what your desires are, and they're very synchronistic in helping to show up and do different timing type things, because they're so in tune with what's happening, that they will, they'll help guide you in that way. They'll help show up when you need an answer for something. They'll just be there at odd times. So people are noticing birds showing up at very strange times, that birds that mean something to them or that remind them of somebody at very important times when they're trying to figure out something. They're noticing their animals having certain behaviors to get their attention when they're trying to make a decision about something, or really trying to connect with them, when they're struggling with something. So the connection and the synchronistic behavior of animals right now, when you're struggling or you're trying to move forward, is off the charts, because they're so in tune with trying to help you move forward.
Now, Tim, you have a couple of pets, right?
I don't think Tim's on anymore, Tim.
Oh, what happened to him? Oh, well. Anyway, would you say, Jennifer, that one animal may be more attuned than another? I mean, do you find that cats have a higher vibration or excel in one area more so than a dog or a bird or a horse?
My personal experience is it doesn't matter the kind of animal. It just matters to the animal itself. So just like humans, some of us are a little bit higher vibration than others. Birds and cats and horses and dogs, they all tend to have a very high vibration, and it's raising. Their vibration is getting even higher as we're moving forth. So it doesn't matter the type of animal. No, that's not my experience.
Now, would you consider yourself an animal whisperer?
Well, I guess I would consider myself an animal communicator.
Yes.
Especially I don't have trouble communicating with animals. I don't have trouble understanding what they need. And I'm sure Diane doesn't sound like she does at all. But anybody can tune into their animals if they know how they communicate, and they communicate through blocks of thought, and they communicate telepathically, because that's how it's done in the spiritual realm. Even when I'm astral traveling, it's really funny. Because when I'm communicating with people in the spirit realm or wherever, I remember, this is a hilarious story. This story is so weird. So I remember one day astral traveling out into, and I don't like to astral travel. I'm just going to throw that out there, because whenever I'm trying to get back in body, it takes me, I'm very, very groggy, and it takes me a long time to kind of get back in body. So one time I found myself out in the field. We had like 7 acres, and I thought, what am I doing out here? Because it's like 10 degrees. This was when I was on the mainland. And, I looked down, and I'm about 3 feet off the ground, and I'm like, oh man, I'm astral traveling. And I was really freaked out because I knew the sun was coming up, because it was up, and I knew I was going to wake up soon, and I knew I had to get back to my body. And so I was trying to hurry up and get back to the house. So I floated to the house, and this is so weird that I would even think this. Diane, don't judge me. But I was like,
No.
thinking, I'm gonna scare my dog, because my dog would always bark at spirits. And I had this great relationship with my German Shepherd, loved her. And we would have the best time together, and I thought it would be a fun thing. And so I went through the door, because when you're astral traveling, you just go right through stuff. I went through the door, and I went right up to my dog, who was named Vixen. And I was like, hi, Vixen. And I thought, oh, she's going to start barking at me, because she barks at all the spirits. And she just looked at me like, are you ridiculous right now? I know who you are. And I thought, really? And so she was telling me, you're being silly. I know who you are. I know what you look like, and I can see you. And so I was like, well, that was totally not fun. And so then I floated into my room, seen myself on the bed, went down, and I went back into body. And then I woke up immediately. When I was in body, I sat up. But again, it's not my favorite thing to do. I just find myself out somewhere, and I'm like, oh, geez, I'm out again. So, but during that time, she was speaking with me telepathically, just like she would normally. It's like you're having a conversation, only your mouth's not moving. It's literally like you're having a conversation.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say the average person here. I have my little kind of adopted cat, Earl. And how do I know, for example, that he's trying to say something to me? I mean, we've never really had. Usually, when I show up at my friend April's house, he'll will take off in the other direction. I mean, how do we how do we know that we're actually creating a bond? What sign can people look for?
It's a regular. They'll come up to you. They'll try to make eye contact with you. They'll make skin contact with you. You know, they will be around you in some manner that is a bonding connection, where they'll try to, like I said, they'll come right up to you, or they'll if your cat is running off, he's like, yeah, I don't feel like talking to you right now. Like, we're good. But
you sort of have to live with a cat, I think.
Yes.
They're really hesitant to. That's probably the basic thing, Tim.
Yeah, more so than a dog, I would guess. But Jennifer, how about we've talked about pretty much domestic animals. How about jungle animals? You know, Wild Kingdom and all. I mean, are there?
They're amazing. I mean, I've always had a very hard time going to a zoo. Even when I was little, of course, that's where everybody wants to take you when you're little, right? Especially because I'm like old, so like that was a thing back then. But if you go to a zoo or went to a circus or something, like the animals, the intelligence, the vibration of those animals are, well, if you go into a zoo or a circus, it's horrible because, and I'm sure Diane again can attest to this.
Right.
The sadness and the vibration that they have is so low. It's about brings you to tears if you can communicate with them, and they become very isolated and introverted in their head. But if you see them in the wild, and even like some of the fish or like sharks and fish are very respected out here, as well as dolphins. And when you see them in the wild, it's the vibration. That's why when you go, a lot of times too, let's say a safari or something, and you get that most amazing, like, wow, this is amazing to see these animals like this. Almost always you will feel that way. And when you see an animal in the wild, and it's because you feel their vibration. Their vibration is off the charts. It's the most amazing feeling to be around an animal in the wild.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Jennifer, and I don't mean to contradict your thinking on this, but don't you also think, okay, we have zoos and we have circuses, and certainly animals should be treated, but if there were no zoos and no circuses, don't you think that, children and even adults would have no way to know that even these animals exist, or there would be no interchange of vibrations or anything with them? If you never saw a dolphin again, or you never saw a lion or a tiger, don't you think you would be missing out on something?
Well, my personal opinion is probably going to differ from a lot of people, but I absolutely think they should do away with the zoos and the circuses, because the feeling of the animals and how depressed that they are and how sad. I
don't know. I saw that panda. Yeah. I saw that panda going back to China, and he looked pretty happy sitting up in the tree there, eating his sugar cane. I don't know, if he would be happier.
Now, a rehab might be different or something. I've never personally been to a rehab place or a one where they're trying to save a species. I'm not entirely sure, but when I've been around captured animals, it's not awesome. Ones that are wounded that need to be protected and then released, I think that there absolutely is a place for that. But in my opinion, I think documentaries, books, some people I lived in an area there was no zoo, and I'm certain that a lot of those kids grew up never being to a zoo, and they still know about animals. So,
well, maybe they see them on TV or something like that. Anyway, Jennifer, are you going to stick around with us, or do you have to go? Because I do want to give you the opportunity to tell us about your books.
I have a little bit more time. I'll hang out with you guys.
Oh, okay, fine. We'll be having a break in a few minutes. This one is a little longer than the last couple of them. Now, where did you live, if I may ask, before you moved to Hawaii?
I actually lived in the mainland in South Dakota. That was over 10 years ago. Yeah, I've been out in Hawaii for quite a while now. Very different there. Very different in the middle of the United States.
I would guess so. Any particular reason that you moved? Was there any mysticism involved in it?
No, there wasn't any involved in it, but I'll tell you what, there was a lot when we got here. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in Hawaii that's pretty amazing. One of the things that happens often to people, and it happened to several of us in the family, but it's known, it's the Hawaiians talk about it, is you actually end up I guess I wouldn't say time jumping, but space jumping or something. There's been times where I remember and this is just one instance, when we first moved out here, or not first moved out here, we'd been out here for a little bit, where we were following somebody who was moving towards our town, and we were going from one side of the island to the other. And this person who we were following, who had like a bunch of moving stuff in their truck, was started to go, and they were literally in front of us. So there's no way for us to miss this person, like none. They were like, I don't know where I am. And my dad was talking to her, and they look around. Where are you? What do you see? What signs do you see? What do you see? Well, I'm nothing yet. I can't see where I'm at. I have no idea where I am. Long story short, when she figured out where she was about 10 miles behind us, 5 miles behind us, probably not 10, 5 miles. Something had happened, and she was literally behind us, and we're not even sure. We would have passed her. And we were like, what are you doing there? Like that, because she was in front of us. That happened to my husband. My husband was going to work one day. He stopped at a stoplight, and he started, it was like a millisecond that he was at the stoplight. And next thing you know, he's 5 miles down the road in front of where he was. And my husband is way more skeptical than, like, he's not like me. And he was like, he totally freaked him out because he couldn't even understand where he was. He was like looking around trying to make sense.
It saves on gas a little, I guess. But
yes, you know, it does. There's a lot of weird things.
There's an episode of Mysteries of the National Parks that they show on the Travel Channel from time to time, and I'm on there talking about Madame Pele. You know, she is every time the volcano is about to explode, she appears as a fiery redhead hitchhiking along the highway. And of course, some people will pick her up, you know, and you'll be sitting in the back seat, and they'll be having a conversation, and all of a sudden they'll turn around and she'll be gone. And then within a couple of hours, there is a volcanic eruption, or the volcano begins to overflow. And of course, there are the night walkers, who we may have had a sighting.
Oh, we've had lots of experiences with the night walkers, especially on my husband's. They work construction, so he was a vice president, and then there's the construction crews. There's very specific areas in Hawaii that you, honest to God, you want to make sure that they're blessed, and if they're not blessed, the night walker, I don't care how skeptical you are, they will come in. Yeah.
And don't take any of the rocks as a souvenir from around the volcano. Well, I see we're coming up. No. We're coming up to our break here in 30 seconds, and Tim Schwartz is back online. So we will be back in, Tim, and we'll stay with us, I hope. We'll be back in just a few minutes with some more exciting adventures in exploring the bizarre, and we've got a mighty important hours still to go. So do call in and do text us and go into the chat room, because we would love to hear from you.
Exploring the bizarre. Your e-ticket ride into the world of the paranormal. Strap yourself in as we traverse the universe, exploring the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology, as well as other dimensions. It's time to take back the night. Now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bizarre, Timothy Beckley and Tim Schwartz.
Wow. Okay, we're back for the second hour of Exploring the Bizarre. And tonight is really a bizarre evening. Well, maybe not so bizarre. We've had some pretty strange shows on conversations in the past. Tonight, we're settling down. We're talking about our animal friends. And we have with us Jennifer O'Neill, who is out there in Hawaii. And we have Diane TESSMAN, a longtime friend and associate of ours, who's in Iowa. Would that be Middle America, Diane?
I'm afraid it would. Yes. It's near Minnesota. I'm 6 miles from Minnesota.
Uh-huh. And but you do live in a very a wooded area. I do. Yeah, and you have in fact, ever since I've known you, you've had quite a menagerie of pets, mainly cats and dogs. Do you ever have any birds or anything?
No birds. But I want to say that at this point, I have a sanctuary. It's bigger than a menagerie, or different. And I started it when I came back here 20 years ago, because I didn't want to just walk around my 10 acres. I wanted to do something with it. Yeah. So I started the Star Network Animal Sanctuary. And my longtime readers donate and contribute. So it's a manifestation of our star network's psychic energy, spiritual energy that has been together. We have cleansing healing days and whatnot for 34 years. So I think it's kind of neat that we made a physical manifestation to help nature's animals, because there's an awful lot of stray cats, feral cats. Gets really cold here, like 40 below in the winter. So it's brutal. There's no shelter in this county. So at this point, my menagerie, which I've always, had, has turned in. Oh, and then it's a wildlife refuge too, because I shelter the deer from the hunters. I'm the old witch of the West, the hunters will tell you, and have all sorts of other wildlife and birds. Wild birds have come because I've let the trees grow.
Mm-hmm. And have you had? I mean, you have your favorite pets. You've had some for many, many years, and there are some that are new arrivals. And I know that the local press has even done articles about you, and people have sent over animals that have been injured, and you've brought them back to health.
Yes, people not only send them over, they dump them here because they know I'll take care of them. So I've had like skin and bones kittens, one little guy thrown into the yard, not always so kind as to bring them over. But I just took in a couple of cats. One is one-eyed and half his ear is gone. The other one has a big hole in his palate. But they're doing well. He's, he can eat. He has kind of a lot of mucus. But, it's kind of nitty gritty. And I was going to say what Jennifer was talking about, the vibration. I really am happier being in an animal vibration these days, nature and my animals. And I really kind of find it difficult to be around a lot of humans. So I've become something of a hermit. But
now, is there
a higher vibration? The animals I feel very at ease with.
Now, is there a psychic bond? I mean, how did you first determine? I guess we've talked about this in the past personally when we've seen each other. A psychic bond. I mean, are some of your animals reincarnated, do you think? Do you believe in that concept? Or
I didn't necessarily believe or hadn't really thought about it for animals. I think it's likely for life forms, including humans. Nobody really knows, to be honest, for sure, what happens after death. It probably varies. But I have had both a dog and a cat absolutely reincarnate. I had a yellow Labrador named Cincy in Ireland, where I lived for 5 years. And she lived to be 15, brought her back over here. And she was very much of an angel dog in the first place because she had been dead at birth. And her original owner gave her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and brought her back after 3 minutes. So Cincy was always very special. And after 15 years, it was time for her to leave, and I was devastated. And she told me, I'll come back, but I'll be a hardship case. And, I wouldn't even use the term hardship case. It's kind of old-fashioned. But I received that telepathically. That's an example. So then about a month later, I went to the North Iowa Humane Society and wasn't looking for a puppy. I volunteer there when I have time. And there was a little puppy about 8 weeks old, part German Shepherd, brought in, who was all torn up, probably from a dog fighting ring. They had found her in the city, so probably not a coyote. And the people hadn't brought her in for days, so she had a terrible staph infection. And she looked at me. They wouldn't let me in the room with her because of the staph. She looked at me, and I looked at her, and she told me telepathically, and I told her, if you make it, I'll adopt you. And she agreed, and they nursed her for 3 months. I didn't. She had a foster mother, but she made it. She almost lost her leg. She almost died. She made it. So they called me and they said, Diane, do you still want to adopt Hannah? And I said, oh, yes. And when she arrived at my house, she walked right in like she'd always been here, like Cincy. And pretty soon there were all sorts of odd signs. I was talking to a friend, and just in a calm voice, I said, yes, when I lived in Ireland, my dog then, Cincy, just loved Mary Frances, a little girl that used to come and see us. And when I said Cincy, Hannah, who had been just laying there, jumped up and licked me and was all excited. And so I says to myself, she responds to Cincy. She'd never met Cincy. Cincy was dead before Hannah came to me. And then a couple of days later, Hannah was headed toward the, who had recovered, was headed toward the road. And I said, come back, Hannah. You don't go to the road. Hannah. And she wouldn't pay any attention. She knew her name was Hannah. And I finally, in desperation, because she had reacted to Cincy, I said, Cincy. And she turned around and she ran back to me as if to affirm, yes, call me Cincy. So usually I called her Hannah, but I would say Cincy Hannah. I'd sing to her in the morning. And so I let her know that I knew Cincy was back.
Well, I did have one paranormal experience with an animal. I had a Persian cat when I was a child. I believe, I had one cat. His name was Nicky, and the other one was Penny. I don't remember which one this was, but the cat had passed away, and I was visiting my grandmother upstairs. And usually when the cat, it was an indoor, animal. He didn't go out. But when he did try to scamper or scurry away, he would manage to get somehow upstairs where my grandparents lived. Anyway, I was visiting my grandmother, and here comes the cat, deceased cat, scampering down the hallway and going through the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it would indicate to me that there are ghostly animals as well as ghostly humans. My goodness.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the ghost talking to you, Tim.
No, thunder.
I just wanted to comment that I think anybody who loves animals will find that they have like a psychic connection with them, and animals just, they know the people, they know who loves animals. Because it's always been that way with me. I could be in a crowd of people, and like the house cat will come in and will go right to me. I always, and same way with dogs. Right. Just I could be in a room full of kids, and the dog will come to me first. Yeah. Not to sound conceited there, but Diane, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, well, Diane, I did want to ask you. You were in the circus, in the Virgin Islands?
Yeah, I've had a great life, and I'm still having a great life. It's not over. I was teaching school and was terribly frustrated. This was in the St. Thomas Virgin Islands, and I ran away to the circus. In Puerto Rico, but it was an American circus with the Walinda. The Walindas were there. Tino, who is the father of the current well-known Walinda that went across the Niagara Falls, and a bunch of interesting European gypsy circus people. Yeah.
Well, I always think of you when on the radio they play the song by Journey, Circus Life Under the Big Top.
Briefly.
Yeah, briefly, yes. How big was the top?
It was in I was with them in Ponce, Mayagüez, and San Juan, so it depended where it wasn't an outside tent. It was arenas. There was it must have been like a horse show arena or something. It wasn't an actual tent.
If you remember, Diane, you and I did go to the circus one time. I believe where you were living in San Diego. Now I can't remember the name of the.
Mira Mesa. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
okay.
And of course, now the big one, which is the Barnum and Bailey, has I guess, closed shop, which I find that I mean, there are other things besides animals in a circus. There's, like you say, the high wire act, and
Right. Well,
in other
go ahead.
no, in other routines. It's kind of sad to see it go, but I guess youngsters today have other interests besides
It's
going.
Sad for the circus people, not
Yes, yes.
circus animals, unless they're not going to a good retirement place, in which case I guess they were kept alive by the circus. And circus people I knew had usually little dogs that they loved. I mean, they were, because they always travel, so they took their pets with them. It wasn't that the circus people hated. I'm sure there's been terrible tiger trainers and all, but the ones I knew, that wasn't it. It was just that it was such a restricted environment. I mean, like a terrible prison for the animals. So I go one way on the circus animals. Yes, for goodness sakes, close it down and get if they can go to a really safe retirement place.
Yeah, but Ted Nugent will go over and take a shot at him.
Don't mention Ted Nugent.
Hey, Jennifer, we're closing in on the half an hour here, and I do want to ask you now. Okay, outside of communicating with animals, you obviously teach classes. What kind of classes do you teach?
Well, I teach psychic development classes, and right now I'm getting into some other stuff where I'm going to be teaching more about dreaming and astral traveling. And I have a spirit communication class coming up as well. So all the stuff that I know about, I like to teach so that people are kind of more clear, because I find that most people have abilities that they're just not tapping into. And so if and when you learn to tap into those abilities, let me rephrase that, everybody has abilities, it makes life easier. It really does. It just makes life easier if you can learn to trust your intuition and signs that you're getting, and you make choices based on that instead of fear of not having any money, fear of, what people will say, whatever. The universe just unfolds really cool stuff for you, but people are kind of trained to, live a certain way. And so their other side of their brain goes, nope, but this could happen and that could happen. And so they shut it all down,
Now, I noticed on your website, and how can people find you on the internet, for one thing?
They just mainly go to keystothespiritworld.com. One of my most popular places, there's my spirit community. There's like a tab up on the right side corner, and we have discussions in there as well. Or they can Google me on YouTube or iTunes. I'm all over the place, kind of. So they just type in Jennifer O'Neill Psychic or Spirit Chat, they'll find me.
And I noticed you've written quite a few books.
Yes.
Well, tell us about some. What are your most inspired works?
Well, I mean, I have the Keys to the Spirit World, which is the communicating with spirits, which triggered the whole thing. And my favorite one is my Universal Laws book, which is 18 Spiritual Laws to Success. And that actually teaches you more about how the universal laws work. Of course, everybody got all excited with The Secret, and I think that was an amazing book to pave the way for a thought change. I think it was fantastic. But I go into it a little bit more, more advanced, I guess I would say, but in a way that normal people who have to do laundry, take their kids to soccer practice, and do all, feed their husband and wife, that they can actually integrate those laws into their regular life, because it's not helpful to do any of these things that I teach if you can't integrate it into your regular, normal, everyday life, Now,
where did these 18 laws of the universe, is that what you would call them? How did you receive them? I mean, did you get them through
channeling?
Channeling. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also a channel. So,
who do you channel?
I have a council of 7 that I channel. And I don't put I guess I don't go advertise that as much now that I think about it. Nobody really asks me about that. But I receive information. I test the information myself. Like I test a lot of the laws. I want to make sure that it's going to be helpful and valid for people before I go along and teach it. Because some of the stuff you get is good information, but it might not be relevant to right now. It might be relevant to 5 years down the road, you know? So I get the information. I try it. If I'm finding success, then I share it.
And is this okay? These universal laws. I mean, are they spiritually based? Would you say? I mean, is most of your material of a spiritual nature, or how practical are these?
Both. They're spiritual and physical nature. So you know how you have the law of gravity, that sort of thing. I mean, that's a real thing. You know. It's just getting people to understand more how energy works and moves in and out your life, and how manifestation occurs, and how money flows into your life. You know, money's an energy, how relationships are all energetic, how people are energy. But mostly the universal laws deals with things that you're bringing into your life or things that you don't want in your life, and how you can have more control over that. How, if you understand the laws, you know how to allow things to flow in, but you also know that when you're pushing against something resistance-wise, the universe doesn't understand that. So it's just going, well, you're putting a lot of effort into this resistance of this picture of something you don't want to happen, so we're just going to give you that picture of what you don't want to happen. So in order to work with energy, which nobody can see, so it's hard for them to understand, you need to understand the rules behind how energy is manipulated. And that's a scientific thing. I mean, it's scientific that things are made of energy. And so when you understand it, then you try to implement it and practice it in your life, you will see results. And that book has been really hugely successful for me, and the amount of emails I get, because they're just like, wow, this is amazing to me. It's retraining your brain to understand something you cannot physically see.
And do you do scrying?
No. I guess I'm not sure. Scrying?
Scrying, you know, like tarot card readings or crystal ball gazing.
I'm not really sure what that is. I can, but I don't need to use tools. So I just don't use tools.
Right.
I just
same here.
Can do it without. Yeah.
I used to read dominoes.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Actually, dominoes and dice were originally a tool of divination, and so are
That's
cards.
A real thing.
Yeah,
Sure,
so are cards. Most people don't realize that most forms of gambling are derived. I didn't win the Powerball.
But that also means that you can read people without those things, or you can read situations you can read without them. See, people train themselves to be able to tune in with the tool, right?
Well,
and
some
so,
people like the tools. I mean, if you don't have the cards in front,
the tools.
Yeah, they love them. Surely,
they love them. They love them because to them. See, then you're pulling information from somewhere. You're not just pulling it out of thin air, right? So they can see that on that card, it's showing this, or on that dice, or on that domino, it's telling you something by that number. And so for people, it makes more sense that, oh, okay, they're getting that from something that I can physically see, and then they're way more comfortable.
Well, one last question I think we have time for. Have you communicated with dolphins?
Oh, yeah. Yes. We've been on a dolphin. They have a lot of dolphin tours, watches out here. My husband took me on one for my birthday, and they're in the wild, you know. And they were around the boat, and they are so human. It's amazing. Like the way that they stare at you and look at you and communicate with you. It's pretty amazing. It's awesome. I would recommend everybody try it if they come to Hawaii, at least. And they have things where you can also swim with the manta rays in the wild. And my son, they went and swam with the sharks, and he's very intuitive. And they swam with them in the wild, no cage, and said it was the most amazing experience they'd had.
I love the water around Tahiti. It is so warm, and there's the mantas come out, and they actually rub up and butt up against you. I guess they like a little bit of a contact with humans. But Jennifer, I do want to Thank you for joining us this evening. It's been a very enlightening experience, and I know that people will want to communicate with you, whether they be humans or animals. And I thank you for coming on the program with us this evening. What's on your immediate docket? Any classes coming up, or?
I'm actually working on a mentorship program. My psychic ability class is starting next month. I only open it 4 times a year. So that'll be at psychicabilityclass.com. But if you go to my spirit community, everybody knows when I'm having it. So that's the next thing. But I'm actually working on a mentorship site program for people who just want to learn more stuff and be more advanced because they're just begging me for it. So there'll be like a library of 162 audios and videos of things, and I'll have lessons every month. So I'm always working on something, Tim.
Aloha to you. Aloha.
Now back to exploring the bizarre with 2 of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal. Your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Well, I was going to open up by singing "We're on the Road to Nowhere." Where are you now, Tim? Well, we don't know where he is.
He looks like he's on.
No, I'm here.
There he is.
I have to keep my mic muted so you don't like hear all the police cars chasing me from behind. You know.
Well, we heard something. We thought it was about 5 Mack trucks or something headed in.
Oh, I just hit another Bigfoot. I mean, they're just all over the place. They jump in front of your car, and you just can't avoid them. You know, they're as bad as the deer around here.
Well, they should have let you. They're probably trying to tell you that they're going to be jumping out in front. You just kind of telepathically have to, gear into them. Hey, Diane, I got a question I bet you'd never been asked before.
Oh, boy.
Are there pets on other planets?
Of course there are, I would say, not pets, but life forms on other planets. Our pets are life forms. They're also, I would call them down here, more our part of our family, our furry animal friends. Pets is a bit reactionary.
Well,
pet people.
I'm not quite
animal people.
I'm not quite as spiritually developed as.
But listen, life forms on other planets, who would be the friends of the sentient race, like humans are supposed to be.
Yeah.
So yes, aliens would have friends from the life form kingdom, the animal kingdom of their planet. Tibus has said, incidentally, that I feel, it really bothers me, this 6th grade extinction that's happening to giraffes, tigers, lions, butterflies, large, small.
What's happening to them?
The 6th grade extinction of animals. I mean, this is a scientific thing because of overdevelopment, climate change, hunting, poaching. Elephants are nearly extinct in, I think is it Africa or India? Their numbers are down in both places, and one's nearly extinct. There's something like 200 tigers left in a certain, I think that's Bengal tigers, perhaps. I mean, there might be a few more tigers somewhere else, but so many species are going extinct that it's the 6th grade extinction.
Hey, if we don't watch out, the human race will be right up there.
That might be a blessing. But Tibus has said, and I wouldn't stake my life on this, but Tibus is usually, for years, he's been pretty accurate in predictions and whatnot, has said that the ETs have taken aboard as many as they can, of animals and birds and things that are in trouble down here. And they have huge starships that are terrarium ships or aquarium ships, and that they've got a breeding program, which they would then return the animals to a new Earth once we're over this terrible mess we're in. meaning environmentally too, not just politically.
Yeah.
Or they would find suitable planets to begin them anew on a new world.
Mhm.
So I think that's an interesting piece of information. I hope it's true.
Now, I remember you wrote a book quite a number of years ago, but it's still available. Earth Changes Bible. Did you get into any of that in the Earth Changes Bible? I mean, will there be certain areas that won't be safe for animals or for humans, or are there locations that we should like move to the area where you live?
No, don't move where I live because I don't want any humans around.
Yeah.
Yes, we've always talked about climate change, change times, which will be and which have become. I mean, we predicted them, a really difficult time of climate change, floods, serious wildfires, superstorms, and we've seen it all come true, and rising temperatures. But I do firmly believe that we'll make it through this. And we've got such a beautiful planet, and the galaxy is teeming with life, much of it intelligent. So we only have to make it through this, past a point of change, risen consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Now, what do you well either see or what have you been told that we should look out for? I mean, what are the signs and symbols that will appear to us in the near future?
Well, I think we've received enough signs. Again, looking at what's happened, I heard on the news recently, there's an island in the Pacific where people literally the water has risen so much that it's washed houses away. That's happened in Alaska with the Inuit people too. We can see the ice shelf that's broken off, and now the actual continent of Antarctica is exposed because the ice shelf has floated away, the Larsen ice shelf. So I think we've got plenty of signs. And again, I think it's up to the human race to either spiritually evolve, or we may not be worthy to go on. I don't know if that's a given. It's a big universe out there. I don't know how important we are, but Tibus says we'll make it. So he kind of says he's from the future, but I always say that the future, if you were from the future, there wouldn't even be any time. You would have conquered time. Mm. So I don't know how literal that is from the future.
Mm. So Tim, are you closer to your destination?
Yes, I am, and I just wanted to comment to what Diane was just talking about.
Yes.
Well, according to some of our illustrious political leaders, much more than scientists do. This whole climate change is just a load of bull hockey.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Well, we've got to wake up and realize that it isn't, and we've got to be masters of our own fate and not blindly follow politicians who are lining their pockets or trying to.
Well, I certainly don't disagree that there isn't the climate change, but there's always been climate change on this planet. I mean, the planet itself was created in chaos, and you can't blame every disaster that takes place, of course, on climate change. I mean, you've got earthquakes, you've got volcanic eruptions, and tornadoes. And I mean, some of them can certainly be pushed along by climate change or by man-made scenarios, but these events have been going on for a long, long time. And I should know because I was the editor of Front Page Disasters magazine. And one of the worst earthquakes on record was in China I think the 1920s, where something like 100 and 50,000 people were killed, or maybe even more than that. It was just an obscene amount. I mean, so you have had and of course you've got all the plagues that have hit us from time to time. After World War One, there was the diphtheria epidemic that wiped out probably half of Europe, and of course the plagues of the Middle Ages and all of that. I mean, so the world does go on, and we could perhaps try not so much to help it along, but there are a lot of disasters that take place kind of on their own. Yes,
there always have been, sure, but things like glaciers melting, pictures of glaciers as they were and as they are now, and only 20 years ago or 50 years ago, they were covered with snow. I guess I just refer you to Al Gore's latest.
Yes.
Rather than trying to document climate change, but I truly believe it exists, and that humans have added to. Sure, there's natural,
no doubt about it.
Volcanoes aren't connected probably to humans. We can't be blamed for everything, but we have not. I mean, there's seas of plastic floating in the oceans. It's not just climate change. It's a total disregard for our mother planet, on whom we stand. Where do we think we'll go? I mean, we haven't even gotten to Mars yet, which isn't hospitable.
Oh boy, I'm sure they welcome us with open arms.
Well, I don't know if anybody. Well, and we may be Martians. We probably came here because we messed Mars up, for all we know.
I have a theory. Of course, I have many insane theories, but I'm not so sure the North and the South Pole have been covered by ice for eons, like it's claimed. And you know why I think that? Partly because of the Perry-Reese map. The Perry-Reese map. Tim, do you remember when that was drawn up or created?
I'm not Tim, but go ahead, Tim.
Yeah. No, I was just Tim. Are you with us?
Oh yeah. Well, I was just going to say the Perry-Reese map was printed or put together around 1513, but it actually was based on even older maps than that.
Yes. Well, I believe that the Antarctic, the South Pole, was not covered necessarily in ice all this time. But how do we know that it was covered in ice going back 2,000 or 3,000 years?
2,000 or 3,000 years is nothing. We're talking about. There was a tropical forest in Antarctica they found, but that was millions of years. I mean, Mother Earth, time to her is different than us.
Well, I still say the Perry-Reese map indicates that there was a period there when the ice did not cover that entire area like we think it did. And people now are, of course, debating over whether we should take down the statues of Christopher Columbus. Because even though he is a hero to some, to other, he was a genocidal monster. Or certainly not within keeping to the spiritual energies of today. And we know for a fact that, of course, and I hate to say this, I'm sure we'll get calls and letters. Columbus did not really discover the New World. In fact, we've had a guest on the program here who have, pretty much presented facts. Tim, wouldn't you say that travel around the planet was much more widespread than we are led to believe?
Yes, absolutely. Tim, are you there too, Swartz?
Well,
absolutely more widespread. I know the Irish claim that they came over and mixed with the Iroquois Indians, who were blue-eyed, many of them. I think that's the right tribe. On the East Coast, and they
found red hair. They talked about the visitors coming off the vessels, the seagoing vessels, and they had red hair and so forth. And some people say, well, it was obviously Jesus. Well, it wasn't Jesus. I mean, he might have come. He might have come over too, but there. I think myself that this whole idea of that the Earth was flat and you were going to fall off, most people knew that was nonsense. these early explorers knew that the world, you weren't going to fall off if you traveled far enough, but they were hoping that other people would believe that, wouldn't take off looking for China or India or something. But they weren't that gullible. I mean, maybe a few people were, but Columbus or whoever, whatever, Leif Erikson, he didn't say, "Oh, I'm not going to sail out into the sunset because some monster is going to grab me."
Yeah.
And, that's just a bunch of absolute hooey.
Well, we're fed disinformation, misinformation, disinformation today on how things really are in a number of ways. So I'm sure that the mass of people were fed superstition back in those days, of course, and a few people knew better, probably. So I agree.
Yeah, Diane, what you've written the Earth Changers Bible. You've written UFO Agenda. Is that the name of the other book?
Yeah, my newest book, not brand new, is UFO Agenda. So you want to know the truth. It's available on Kindle and Amazon, and I have copies. If anybody would want an autographed paper copy, I have them here.
Well, I remember. Let's see. There's the God Cloud.
7 Rays of the Healing Millennium.
Yeah.
The God Cloud, and the classic big seller, The Transformation, is available. I have it on Amazon and Kindle, and I also have copies here.
That started out as we published that in a I guess you couldn't paperback, yes, stapled portfolio. I would believe would be a more correct term for that. But we used to offer it with a crystal cross. And that was at the peak of the popularity of some of these tabloids like the Weekly World News and the Sun and all. And we sold thousands of copies of that book at that time. So there must be lots and lots of people there who are probably going to reread that book tonight after they finish.
I have readers who say, "Oh, they just reread it again, and they cry good tears," and it's apparently a very moving book. I'm so busy, I haven't read it for a while. But
I enjoyed the personal photographs in the book. Like, actually, I think that's the book where you're hanging upside down from the tree in a tire. I believe that. And my favorite,
it's just the tree. There was no tire. It was the tree and me.
The tree. I don't know. Somehow there's a tire that sticks in my mind. Maybe that was another photograph.
I had my hips balanced on the tree limb. My body was in perfect balance. Spread across the tree limb.
And then, of course, my favorite is the present that we found on your doorstep. Somebody had sent you a replica, a rather poorly constructed one, a replica of a extraterrestrial. And what did it say on the front of the replica?
It said DT phone home.
Oh, that took a little bit of thought on somebody's part.
Yeah, I'm sure they've been thinking of it. I think it was the neighbors. I had already.
Yeah, it wasn't done. It wasn't done maliciously or anything. It wasn't like they threw a rock through the window or burned a cross on your front yard or something like that. But yes, those certainly were the days in Poway, right?
Yep. That was Mirror Maze.
Wait, is that Bigfoot? Or
no, it's me. I'm back in my home, and my cats are running to greet me.
Glad
you're back home.
Back home again. And I wanted to ask you, Diane. Actually, this question comes from my daughter. She wanted me to ask you when she found out that we were going to be doing a show together, and you may have danced around this subject just a little bit, when I wasn't able to hear you when I was on the road, but she really wants to know if our companion animals are going to be with us, when we pass on. She's seen these shows, like where, like in ministers are like, oh no, only people have souls, animals don't have souls, and that concerns her. She's like me. She's a big animal lover, and she just cannot conceive an afterlife without our, furry friends.
I am sure that animals have souls. They have given me more inspiration spiritually, really, than anything in my life. And the inspiration is that I tend to be a part of me is a bit of a skeptic, and they have shown me miraculous magic, soulful truth. And I thoroughly believe that they go on in consciousness as we do. And I thoroughly believe that once you bond with an animal, they will be with you when you pass on. And I think the way that, I don't know if you heard, but that my dog that reincarnated from Cincy to Hannah, the way that's done, because I've had a cat do it as well. Not every cat, but I think, I don't know if you saw the Star Trek movie where Spock's katra was stored in McCoy. I think
Yes.
can hold, a katra. I think a human can hold a katra of an animal friend until they can find another fursuit to go into. So if that link is there, that strong spiritual connection, I know that we'll be together, whatever nice place we end up when I pass on. Absolutely. They have souls.
I can just imagine, like somebody who, like thousands of years ago who didn't like animals just probably came up with that.
Yeah, well, so they would have power over people because our animal friends give us power and joy, and the church they wanted total power.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
so there.
Yeah, I like it. So there. Take that.
That'll teach him to burn me alive in a past life.
hey, so Diane, what's on your agenda? What have we missed discussing this evening?
Well, if anybody would like to have a free online sample of my newsletters, Earth Change Times Quarterly, which talks about coming disaster predictions, comfort for people who are different, who believe change times. Anyway, I'd be happy to send a free sample of both that and the Heartline, which has been going all these years for experiencers, star people, abductees, contactees, enlightened humans, animal lovers. So there's that. I'll be down to the my email is dianetessman0@gmail.com. My website is www.earthchangepredictions.com.
And of course, you don't have a separate website for your animal sanctuary?
I have thought of doing that, and yes. I'm not a web builder, and I just have not gotten around to it. I have had some really generous mentors throughout the year who are now gone, so I'm always looking for donations. We're always hard up, but I haven't built a website for the sanctuary.
Well, I know a little HTML. I know how to break up a paragraph with 2 brackets and the letter P in the middle.
Yes, yeah.
That's my big HTML.
I don't even know that.
Training. Well, that's why when you go to Amazon and you look at the descriptions of our book, there is a space between the paragraphs, because if you didn't include that P inside the bracket, you'd have all the copies kind of squashed together.
Right.
Well, Diane, I want to thank you for being on the show. I believe you've been on the program as many times, or maybe more than anybody else, and you're always you're always welcome here. In fact, if you go to the archives either on kcorradio.com or YouTube, in fact, if you go to YouTube and type it, go to Mr. UFO's secret files and type in Diane Tessman, you'll find a couple of videos. We have one of her at Giant Rock out there in the desert, and there's another one, I can't remember what the other one is, but there's a lot to do.
Ireland?
Ireland, yes. A Lot to Do and See at Mr. UFO's Secret Files on YouTube. And the archives will be up shortly here. And thank you once again.
You've been listening to Exploring the Bizarre with hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz. They're taking back the night by jetting non-stop across the cosmos in search of the truly bizarre and totally unexplained, with you as their co-pilot. Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on Exploring the Bizarre and hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz, check out their KCOR Digital Radio Network page. Follow their YouTube channel at MRUFO 1100. Exploring the Bizarre.